Good evening, and welcome to tonight's event. My name's Rob. I'm part of the recruitment and marketing team here at Now Teach. To introduce you to your team for the night, we've got Joe, who's behind the scenes, making sure all of our tech is working perfectly. We have Rach and Wendy on hand to answer your questions. I'll introduce you to the Q&A box when we get up and going in a few moments' time. And I'm really pleased to be here this evening, fresh from his second placement in schools with Peter, our Now teacher, who will be sharing his experiences with us all. So a big thanks in advance to the team and to Peter for the great insight that I know he will offer. With regards to tonight's event, firstly, thank you for joining us. I don't know where you are in the country, but it's beautifully sunny where I am, so I can imagine it's quite alluring to get out into the sunshine, although the wind, I must admit, is quite bracing. So take shelter, stay with us, and hopefully we'll be able to provide you with an informative and engaging hour. We appreciate you're all likely to be at various stages of your career change journey. You might be starting to think about teaching. You might be getting ready for a September start. You might be thinking about getting your certificates down from the loft. You might be going through interview processes, selection processes, or just starting to maybe get some school experience. Whichever stage you're at, I hope we can answer all of the questions that you have this evening. Before we go any further, we'd love to know a little bit more about you and what stage of your career change journey you're at. This will help us to tailor some of the content and some of the questions during the session tonight and as we follow up over the coming days. So a poll has just popped up onto your screen. I'm going to pause for a few seconds just to give you the opportunity to complete it. Just some short, relatively easy, I hope, straightforward questions for you to complete. Great, thank you very much. I must admit, whenever that poll comes up, I always have a little debate in my own mind whether I would be an English teacher or a history teacher, and I think I came down on the side of history this evening. So let's see how you voted a little bit later on. We appreciate you may wonder if you really want to join a further organisation when you maybe have a school that you're engaging with, a training provider to manage. You've got budgets to work out. You've got a whole host of information, views, blogs, insights, websites to look through. There's a whole load of information, insight, and I suppose quite detailed and nuanced applications and forms that you need to complete. The simple answer is that we passionately feel that Now Teach is not more work. It's not more requirements. It's plain and simple. It's about more support for you and making your career change happen. That's our charitable status. That's our mission and vision, and that's what we're here for. And I hope we can help you tonight and ongoing into the future. Let me explain a little bit more about tonight. To make sure we can answer all of your burning questions, and I hope you have a lot, you will see a Q&A tab, and Joe's very kindly circled that in red. Now, the Zoom Q&A tab, to avoid confusion, is the one that is labelled Q&A and not the chat box. I know some applications and some maybe Teams is the chat box tends to be the one that's used. On Zoom, we'd very much like you to put it into the Q&A, please. The team will be on hand to answer your queries, and we'll either answer them in the chat or some of them, if there's some themes coming through, Peter and I may pull them out and address them across the audience so everybody could hear from our answers. Okay, so the purpose of tonight's event is to share something about what it's like to change career to teaching and how Now Teach can help you make that happen. Not only that, but we'll also take through how we can support you during your training and after your training for as long as you want to be part of our network of hundreds of career changes as you progress into your career. I was reading some research this morning about a whole host of support networks, inspiring people to do different things, motivating them to make changes in their lives, a whole host of different research. It pours and really focuses on peer-to-peer support as being absolute paramount in helping people to really act on those things. And that's what our network is. It's a wonderful network of people whose footsteps I hope you're thinking of following in, changing their professional careers, using their experience that they've gained in a number of different careers and pulling that into the classroom. At Now Teach, we want to see a world where children benefit because talented people who have already had successful careers become secondary teachers and brings in their skills and experience to the schools that need them the most. We won't cover every aspect of teaching. We won't set ourselves a bar that's too high, but by 7 o'clock, hopefully we'll tackle some of those key bits and delve a little bit deeper into Now Teach. So before we begin, let's hear from some of our Now teachers about their experience of changing career in this short film.
Even the teachers in the staff room are curious as to why someone at my stage of life have actually changed into teaching. And what I love about Now Teach is that we don't need to question each other's purpose for becoming the teacher.
And so having the support of Now Teach, which is an organisation which is made up of people like me, has been really, really helpful through my training year and beyond. And I think will be part of it, of my future career.
The most important thing really is you're just not alone. You have that network of like-minded people that make you feel that you made the right decision, really.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Joe. We were just musing before you joined guests about how we need to update some of the visuals on that video. We've now got up to 1,300 Now teachers that are currently in our network and are looking to welcome another 250 into our September 2026 cohort. So hopefully you could be one of them. Much like Peter, who's a Now teacher, a maths teacher, currently going through his second placement, Peter, as you mentioned a little bit earlier on. So yeah, welcome. And maybe I can hand over to you to share some of your experience of career changing and getting into trainee teaching with Now Teach. Peter, over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. So a little bit of a background on me. So I spent about 25 years in the City of London as an investment manager, a few different roles there. And then I studied maths at university, and it always been sort of the path not taken, basically going down the route into teaching. And so when I left the City, I decided it was really the time for me to become a teacher. It was the fate had called me, basically. But I got in touch with Now Teach, and they put me in touch firstly with a teacher to chat through their perspectives and give me the opportunity to have a bit of an understanding about what it's like in the classroom, and then they sort of guided me through some of the processes that you have to go through in terms of the application forms you have to fill in with the DFE and so on, and application forms for scholarship and so on, and what I needed to think about when I was filling those in, that would sort of satisfy what schools were looking for and what those bodies were looking for, and also really kind of just help to kind of give me the push to get on with it, really, to kind of get those things in place. I applied a little bit late in the year. I think it's towards the end of May. I was getting around to things, or perhaps in June, and so maybe it was a little bit later than I should have ideally taken that move, but it worked out really well. I got a lot of encouragement and a lot of help to do it. And that made it a lot easier for me to fill in all that stuff and get all those forms in and get accepted. I applied to a PGCE at the University of Hertfordshire, which is down the road from me in Hatfield, basically because it was kind of convenient, a well-regarded institution, and had a network of lots of good local schools. So I was reasonably confident I'd be placed in a nice school that was local to me and gave me a lot of opportunities. And obviously I chatted to them and chatted to some local schools and things as well before I kind of pressed the final button. But that was a really good process. So as Rob just said, I'm in the middle of a PGC at the moment. I'm doing a part-time route at the University of Hertfordshire. So that means that I'm I'm doing the PGC for 3 days a week. And so I started last September and I will finish in December this year. So it's a 4-term PGC rather than a 3-term PGC, which was kind of the right kind of balance, the balance for me. And as I personally have found really positive, because it's given me time to really spend on thinking and reflecting as I've been going through the PGC, and making sure that's worked really well. I decided to do a PGC. I thought it was worthwhile doing the PGC and doing the study that's required in terms of writing assignments, rather than just going down the QTS route, because I thought that would be a really useful thing to do for me. And I guess just to kind of reflect on what I found so far. So I've been placed in a main school since September, which has been really interesting. All the teachers I've encountered have been incredibly helpful. One of the big surprises for me was that teaching, I think is really quite collegiate. People are really quite friendly, quite happy to share their ideas, their resources, and how to tackle problems. It's not quite like the commercial sector, where sometimes there's a bit more of an agenda that people have and they want to kind of show their thing and their success. In teaching, it's much more we're all in this together, and we want to make this work, and they genuinely, I haven't really found anyone that's sort of been sort of at all, in any way, competitive or unwilling to help me understand things and make things work. So that's been really good. So I've had a primary placement since September. I'm now on my secondary placement. I think different universities have different structures to when you go on first place and when you go on second placement and so on. And my second placement is now going to last until mid-June. And it's quite fascinating because I'm getting the opportunity to see a completely different school, completely different demographic and ability ranges, and style. And that's absolutely fascinating. You get a totally different experience, which wherever you end up is really going to be very helpful and very, very, very strengthening. And in terms of enjoyment, I've really enjoyed it so far. I guess obviously there are things that surprise you as you go on these things, and as you work through things. But when you teach people and you manage to get things across to them, even if initially sometimes it can be a bit of a struggle in a particular class. Once the kind of almost in a way, the more you've struggled to teach somebody something, the more rewarding it is when you eventually you figure it out and you can see that the lights have gone on, and that thing is doing well, and maybe you mark their tests or whatever, and you say, oh yeah, they did it, they got it. So personally, I think it's been a really enjoyable thing for me. Yeah, so I guess that's my quick intro.
That's great, Peter. I think I'm going to put a few questions to you, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned working in kind of investment. Did you always have a kind of an interest in going into teaching, and why was it the right time to change for you?
So I guess I had a choice. I could have I left my firm in the city. I could have pursued opportunities back in the city. But I in the back of my mind, ever since I've been at university, I was thinking it would be nice to be a teacher someday. And I've been 2.5 decades in the city, so you can probably work out roughly how old I am. So there's clearly you don't want to leave these things too long, and you need to take the time to do it. So I thought this was the time to do it, and I think probably the support I got and the the advice I was getting. So I was very lucky to be put in touch with a few teachers through Now Teach and through just contacts of mine. And I was able to kind of chat to them and people that had done sort of vaguely similar things, as big changes in their career, and just sort of listen to them and hear, okay, well, why did you do this? How did it work out for you? How are you feeling now? You're 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 4 years in, whatever. How is that working out for you? And the message I was getting back was really, very consistent, that it was like that, this was a move that they found really personally rewarding for them as a person, and have had really good feedback. And the one thing that really stood out for me was a guy who I think he's probably four 4 or 5 years in, having been in a big accountancy firm, and I had a long chat with him, and he said to me, "Look, this is just incredibly rewarding. I've just finished I'm just finishing up the year with my year tens, and I've told them I'm not going to be teaching them next year." Because I'm doing different sets and so on, and they like gave me a big round of applause and so on. And so you get some positive feedback from the children in a really nice way, and that's been really positive for me.
Great. And your subject,
Mm,
so how did you, so you've talked broadly about teaching and going back into
yes.
that profession. What did you have to deliberate on the subject, or was that always quite clear to you, the subject that you'd like to teach?
Yeah, it was pretty clear to me. So I have a degree in maths. I did contemplate other things. I had done quite a bit of work on sustainability and sustainable investing while I was in the city. So there was a brief period, and I thought, oh, maybe I should do geography. But it was pretty clear I was gonna do maths. And that is the thing that's obviously an area in which there is a shortage of teachers as well. But really, it was my kind of core love and the thing I really wanted to do. So, I was going to be going down that direction, I think.
I was
Yeah.
going to go down that route. Fantastic. And then just before our audience joined, you were speaking to Wendy, who was your career change specialist. So
Yes.
without wishing to embarrass Wendy or going down any of those kind of conversations, I was just wondering how Now Teach sort of played a role in those early stages around your application, and what,
Yeah.
what support were you provided with, and how did that help you navigate kind of teacher training applications and
Yeah.
etc.
So I think I contacted Now Teach, and first of all, there's a sort of process that you go through, and I was put in touch with the teacher to kind of help me solidify my do I really want to do this? And then put in touch with Wendy. And it was really helpful because, obviously she knew the timelines and when things needed to be in by to be, to have a chance of actually happening. I was slightly worried, maybe I'm slightly late, maybe I just can't get it in this year and I'm, have to do it the year later. But, she was really helpful in saying, no, 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 but you just need to get this done. You need to do this by this date and so on. And kind of guiding me through the things that people would be looking for in the applications, because it is a different world from the commercial world in some regards. You obviously, there's a lot of valuable experience and insights you have from the commercial world, but you kind of have to sort of make it work in this world as well, and make sure you're kind of expressing things in quite the right way. And that was really helpful. And so I went through the process of applying to the university here and a couple of other places through the application system, as well as applying for a scholarship. And so, I was able to get good feedback on my personal statement and so on as I went through that, and that really enabled me to think through what I wanted to say and forced me to think through what I wanted to say when I got those interviews and things as well, which is really helpful, because and there are things that you kind of wonder, what do I need to say to this question or that question, or kind of how can I express myself in an effective way in answer to this thing, when you haven't got the experience of being a teacher. So it's quite it's really useful kind of springboard to help you into it. And of course, once you're in it and you've kind of gone through that stage and you're now at university, and schools and things, and it's been really interesting having the network on Now Teach. I don't know how many people end up in the network, but my experience is using the app and things like that. I can see lots of things that are going on. I can communicate with a whole load of people. So having a network is really useful in this business of teaching, in a way, because you kind of feel that it's really useful when you're going through something very new and you're hearing other people's experience. What are they finding out at this stage? What things are causing them concern? Or as you move on, there are new things that come on your mind, like applying for jobs or the other things that you might do. And there's like a network of people. I've discovered people just around the corner that or through the Now Teach network as well, that I'm now good friends with, and things like that as well. And so having that sort of network is really helpful. So yeah.
Great, thank you. So you mentioned scholarships. One of the things that a lot of prospective candidates talks about is sort of finances and
Mm,
budgeting and the whole kind of complexity of leaving a job, becoming a student again, and working
mm.
through that. How did you kind of find navigating that whole piece?
the practicalities of applying for the finance and things like that were really simple. So, I had to apply for my PGC place. I got offered PGC from the places I applied to essentially, and then had to choose where I was going. They basically looked after most of the legwork in terms of doing the applications for the actual bursaries and so on. I applied for a scholarship as well, and that was also successful. And I think probably the support I got from Now Teach in terms of like preparing for the interview for the PGC place was also really helpful in terms of the scholarship, because they were kind of asking similar things, but they were looking for passion, interest in the subject, and genuine interest in teaching and thoughtfulness about teaching, and that was so that was really useful. I'm not sure I've answered your full question now. Maybe I forgot your question.
No, no. Well, I mean, we'll go through a few slides a little bit later on, but as I suppose we go through the process of applying for teacher training, there's potential scholarships, there's different funding for maybe knowledge enhancement, or there's
Mhm.
bursaries that are available.
Yes.
So you've gone through the university and the PGC, the postgraduate certificate in education, but potentially could have gone into a school and gone down a skip route.
Yes.
So
Ah,
it's a
yes.
whole dynamic, I suppose, that people need to work their way through. But you
Yeah,
decided to do the PGCE. Was there
I
anything in
did.
particular that you?
So the PGC route and the bursary or scholarship was most attractive to me. A couple of reasons. Well, firstly, the scholarships are tax free, and that for various reasons, the tax free nature of that was particularly helpful to me. And I think having a university centered route where I could I had a university to fall back on if anything happened, any problems happened in relation to the school, I thought would be a useful feature, which was kind of one of the things that drove me to go down a university-led route rather than applying directly to a school. There's obviously advantages to both, and I'm not really qualified to talk about the school direct route because I didn't go down it, so other people talk about it better than me. But I got, that was kind of my feeling at the time that I applied, and I think there's something like 27, 28 PGC students at my university who are studying maths, and of about 160 overall. So it's a big cohort. So you arrive on the
Mm,
first day, and it is quite like sort of being back at first day at university, back as an undergraduate. But they've all been really helpful, really supportive, and there's a mixture of people there who applied to the university and who are school direct and have then been sent to the university to do the academic side of their course. So they've largely ended up, whichever way they came in, they've sort of ended up going through that funnel and all being together at the university. And that's been really supportive. We've all become really good friends. We talk to each other regularly. We have WhatsApp groups and so on as well. So there's a lot of camaraderie about going through this process, and people really interested to learn from each other and to support each other. So
yeah,
it's been a good route. Yeah.
great, thank you. I'm going to fire one more question at you, then I might give you an opportunity to grab a glass of water, and then I'll go through a few slides. But I'm just so you're relatively new into your teaching journey, coming up to, where are we now? April, so well, one term to go before the end of the academic year. I just wondered on your sort of initial reflections of the difference between your previous career
Mm.
and your new career.
Yeah. So reflection. So well, obviously we teaching. I'm sure everybody realizes teaching is quite intense when you're actually, when you're doing it. When you first go into the classroom and you're going up to the front, obviously not immediately, but a few weeks into your training, and you gradually move up to the front, and you may be first of all conducting a small task, but then eventually you're conducting the whole classroom. There's quite a lot to do. At the same time, there's all these children in the classroom who have needs and want your attention, and you're also trying to think through what you're trying to teach them, and make sure you understand the technology, and if something is bound not to work, and so you're trying to juggle quite a lot of things at the same time and make sure that nothing goes wrong. And the very first time you do it, it kind of seems quite challenging. Like you're at the first time, like in the first time with anything, but you're trying to do all these things. But once you've gone through it a few times, you kind of learn where the problems are likely to lie. I need to make sure I've practiced on that whiteboard in or on the smart board in break or something, so I know exactly how it works, and I know exactly what happens if I sort of turn up and the computer doesn't work, or any of the other things that might happen. And make sure you've got spare equipment and stuff in case the children turn up without whatever the thing that they need for your lesson. So that's quite a kind of a thing to get used to, but it does kind of calm down, and you kind of get more used to the routine and the rhythm of doing that. And there is a bit of a sort of a race in that you start the every half term, and you've got those sort of six-ish weeks in front of you, which are going to be quite intense. And then at the end of those 6 weeks, you're kind of done for a nice break, and then you're back again, and then you've got another nice break. So those breaks are kind of quite pleasant and quite rewarding, which obviously, and they're obviously a lot longer than you get in the commercial environment. So, in a commercial environment, in many commercial environments that I've been in, there's probably not quite so much the pressure in the actual moment to, there's not quite so many people demanding things of you this very instant. But there is obviously a lot of pressure on you, and there can be a lot of things to manage over time. And so all those time management skills that you develop as a in the commercial sector come more to the fore when you're arranging yourself in that teaching career. So, when you're thinking, oh, tomorrow I'm going to be teaching this class, and the next day I'm going to be teaching this class, and I've got this assignment to write as well, and things like that, and you're trying to work out how you're going to prioritize those, and how you're going to make sure that everything works well. So it's a different kind of pressure to the sort of pressures you have in the commercial environment. There is definitely definitely that pressure that you need to manage your time well, and you need to be kind of ready. But the experience that you have, I think, as somebody that's had a job beforehand, means that you're perhaps more able to think through in advance kind of what those challenges will be, and perhaps the way you project yourself in the classroom can help too. And I know I've seen that with the colleagues on my course, where there are some people that are very new, fresh undergraduates that are just going into it, who maybe find it a little bit more challenging to kind of project themselves in a classroom and come across, whereas some of the white hair and things sort of help slightly when you're you're in a classroom, and the students immediately see you're nowhere near the age that they are at. You kind of you have some life experience, and that's perhaps something that does actually help somewhat to kind of give that sense there in the classroom.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm going to maybe move across to some slides, Peter. So yeah, please do grab a glass of water. Thank you so much for that overview. Really, really helpful. Please do keep the questions coming through in the chat. Hopefully we've whetted your appetite for a few things you might like to probe into, or go into a little bit more detail. So I'm going to wander through a few slides, and then we'll come back to Peter, and I'll pose a few questions for him. So please do keep on plugging away in that Q&A chat, and we'll get through as many of those questions as possible in a few moments' time. So first, let's give you a quick overview of how you can gain support getting into secondary school teaching at NowTeach. So firstly, and just to be clear, we don't run a teacher training program, but we do support career changers transition into teaching, and importantly, to remain in teaching as part of the NowTeach network throughout their entire career as a teacher. We do this in three ways. We've mentioned, I suppose by name, the recruitment team a couple of times, but the recruitment team are here to support you into your initial teacher training application. So whether that's starting to think around, I've got an idea, I'd like to be a teacher, but I don't really know where to go. Maybe there's you've got a slightly firmer idea, and you've got a few thoughts or a few preconceptions you'd like to work through. Maybe you're looking at applying, or you're working through student finance, or you've got selection applications that are coming up. The recruitment team are there to give you career change specialist advice, to help guide you through your decision-making process, empower you with information to make the right choice for you. We're not going to do it for you. It's your journey, but we will be there to support, to mentor, to coach, and to help you through those initial stages. And then as Peter goes into, and as you would go into your teacher training, we're there to support you through your training years and then on to your early career teaching. The network, I suppose, is something that I'd like to sort of touch on as a third point. Yeah, we'll go over 1,500 now teachers in the network, which is a great number of people. And as Peter said, you'll build those relationships. We have a platform that people are able to engage with, to get in touch with each other, a variety of different WhatsApp groups, some wonderful resources on there to help you transition into and to navigate your first year, your second year, and then into teaching. So there's a great support network, not only through the Now Teach staff, who are I think collectively got over 100 years worth of teaching under their belts, but also from that network of career changes that are there. And I can pretty much guarantee that anything that you do come up against during your training year, or through any of the application pieces, or certainly within a school, someone has seen it before, someone has gone through it before, and you won't be alone in some of those challenges, or sharing some of that wonderment of just what it's like to work in a school. If you haven't already, I'd really encourage you to submit an expression of interest form. You'll find these on the website. Just complete the form. One of our career change specialists, the recruitment team, will get in touch, and we'll help you to on your journey into teacher training. So let's talk a little bit about the different training routes. Peter alluded to them a little bit earlier. At a very basic level, there are two main types of training program. There's the university or the school-based route. As Peter said, in many ways, they come together at certain points during the year anyway. The university route is where you'd be beginning in a university, and then you'd spend some time in a school. The school-based route, you'd be in the school, and then you'd learn on the job from day one. We can help you decide which route would best suit you, your preferences, your learning style, and is most applicable to how you would like to manage your career transition. There are two qualifications associated with teacher training. As Peter mentioned earlier, he's studying for his postgraduate certificate in education. That's not compulsory to qualify as a teacher, but is a common qualification that people do take. The key one is the QTS, the Qualified Teacher Status, which is the qualification that you require to teach in a school in England. That's the key thing. And if you wanted to turn that into a PGCE, that would be an option that would be open to you as well. So, am I eligible? There are legal criteria for teaching set by the government that you must meet to be able to qualify to get onto a teacher training program. GCSE Maths and English at grade C or a level 4 above or equivalent. You'd also need an undergraduate degree. There's further subject criteria and eligibility, which varies on training provider. But basically, it's either an A-level degree or relevant experience in your chosen subject area that is required. Now, there's slightly different variations and criteria per training provider, and this is, I think, where the Now Teach team comes into their own. They understand the training landscape, they understand what potentially is on offer at those different training providers, and can help you navigate to find the best course and the best route for you. If you do have overseas qualifications, you can apply to a governing body called ENIC for a statement of comparability. They will check how your overseas qualification matches up. With all of these things, I would urge that you do it quickly. Peter mentioned a little bit earlier that I think you applied towards the end of May. We're getting into May now. We are coming towards the conclusion, I suppose, of the recruitment season. So I would urge you to act now and start to progress in at least thinking about what you'd like to do, and starting to move your application forwards if you are looking to get into training places for September 2026. At this point, just have a quick note on subjects. So we support trainees across a range of subjects, especially to work on those applications for where there tends to be more training positions available. The Department for Education has a number of different names for them. They've called them shortage subjects or priority subjects. We very much want to make sure that we are, as a charity, supporting teachers to go into the classrooms that need them the most. So we certainly welcome applications from everybody that is interested in those subjects that you can see at the bottom there. But we do tend to really sort of focus on maths, physics, chemistry, modern foreign languages, or computer science. That said, if you're interested in RE and arts and design, please do get in touch. There are often more training options that are available for subjects, and you get more choice of where to train. And they also can attract a slightly higher government bursary. Again, the team will be on hand to provide any insight and support on that changing picture around finances, which brings us nicely onto the next slide. Career changing can mean a change of income for many. I know many of you will be thinking about this right now, especially. There are tax-free bursaries that are available. These vary, and the higher bursaries go to the subject courses that are supposed most require applicants, so the shorter subjects. Or trainees pay tuition fees for the training year, whether they're at university or on a school route. Student loans are available, and the equivalent for your training year is a year of university fees, which is just under £10,000 at the moment, 9,790. Maintenance loans are available for living costs depending on your household income. Once you gain your QTS, you'll enter the teacher salary scale. Again, they vary, but as a newly qualified teacher, you'll begin in and around the 31k outside London or 33 in London. It does tend on a yearly basis that those kind of thresholds start to move and could go up. But that's currently where we stand in terms of finances. Now let's come to some of the questions that have been put in the Q&A box. So thank you for doing that. I'm interested, firstly, just to think a little bit more, Peter, and welcome back. Just about the pressures. You mentioned the pressures of teaching versus the pressures of corporate life. Both kind of different, but different kind of pressures you mentioned. Yeah. How do you feel in a classroom versus maybe in a boardroom?
Oh gosh, yes. Well, it's very different to a boardroom. I mean, children don't always quite behave like fellow board directors do. So so that's certainly quite different. I think when whatever experience you've had in the past, whether you've had experience in the boardroom or maybe you've had some experience lecturing at universities or things like that in sort of adult education, that it is quite different in the classroom. You have children have different ways of expressing themselves and different ways of drawing attention and things, and you have to manage a classroom in a very different way, I think, to the way you manage meetings and things in a boardroom. That said, the skills that you've developed through life are quite powerful in helping you to do that. You just have to kind of learn how you can bring them and apply them. So initially, you kind of you see a classroom and think, oh, how am I going to manage this? How am I going to make sure these 30 odd children are sort of attending to what I'm trying to say, and how do I maintain their attention and things like that. But as you kind of listen to some of the guidance that you get from your PGCE and from your mentor and things before you even think about starting to teach the children, you start to realize, these are things I obviously was thinking about when I was, in the commercial world too. How do you maintain attention? How do you remind people of things they already know? All those techniques that you've learned commercially, and it's just a question of like reframing them for the classroom so that you're sort of channeling those in a slightly different way, but a way that's effective and can teach those children. And that's really useful. And that's, I think, the advantage of a really good university course as well. If you can, what they hopefully teaching you is sort of behavior management strategies from the very beginning, so that when you go into the classroom for the first time and you're standing at the front, you're not feeling sort of exposed. You're actually feeling like, I know what I'm doing here. I know the strategies I've got, and you just have to kind of, bring yourself to apply them properly and follow through on your training. So yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Just interested again, just pulling on the sort of the content of your teaching. So in your case, maths, but and I can imagine 2 decades in kind of investment, you were familiar with numbers, but what did you need to do to kind of reacquaint, or did you need to reacquaint yourself with the subject matter and maybe some parts of maths you haven't touched for a number of years, and others you were slightly more familiar with. How did you get to a level where you feel comfortable with the content of what you're teaching?
Yeah, so I think if you've had children, for example, and you've spent some time sort of helping them to some extent, that will have sort of refreshed your knowledge automatically anyway a little bit. Obviously, there's a big difference when you go into the sort of into the to the lecture room with your fellow students. There's a range of people, and there are people that have just come off a university degree and are completely fresh. They know all the GCSE, all the A level, and all the university stuff, and they've just done it, so they know that really well. So they have that particular advantage that they don't need to refresh themselves on any of that at all. And obviously, that varies then amongst the kind of the older PGCE students. It will vary the extent of their familiarity, but it's not that challenging to pick up and to fill the gaps that you have in your knowledge. The way we did it was that we were presented with the GCSE paper at a very early stage in our training, and basically told just have a go at this and do this, and they said this is like a really good guide to where you need to think about your gaps. So just do this. It's not going to be taken in and marked or something, but do it, and then here's the mark scheme, and then talk through it with your colleagues and things, and then follow through. And I think most of the people on the course have obviously got the revision books and things like that exist for GCSE, just to kind of help remind them of the things which they were taught whenever they were taught it. But also you kind of learn a lot of stuff in the classroom. You take on a particular topic that you're going to teach. You do your research on it just to make sure you're fully familiar with it, and there's nothing really important that you've missed. But your colleagues, your teaching colleagues, are also there to help you. So if I was starting to teach something I hadn't taught before, I would always go and ask a colleague and say, okay, this is roughly what I think they need to learn, and where I think the pitfalls will be, and the points they'll be challenged. And then the colleague will say, yes, but you haven't thought about this thing, or this thing is bound to be a problem, or whatever. And so that's really helpful. So I wouldn't I personally I don't think any of my peers on my course have found the maths to be problem. They've had to work a little bit in many cases, but that hasn't been like the thing that's been so shocking for them that's been a big problem.
Yeah, great, thank you. So you described a little earlier, I think it was sort of your terms as almost sprints, that you start off at the half term, a lot of intensity, and then kind of get through to the 6 weeks, have some lovely time off, and then go again. We've got a really good question in the chat, so thank you for submitting it, around what a sort of a, dare I say, a normal school week looks like for you.
Yes. Yes, so it changes over the duration of the course, at least at the university I'm at in Hertfordshire. So for the first 6 months, you spend every Monday at the university, and the rest of the week you spend at school. So if you're a full-timer, that means 4 days a week at school. If you're a part-timer, it means you're 2 days a week in school. And then after those 6 months or so, you move to being exclusively school-based. And so you're spending 3 or 5 days, depending whether you're part-time or full-time in school. And you also have these things called intensive training and practice, which occur throughout your university time, where you spend a week basically on intensive training, which often means being at a different school to your home school, and they're basically setting up intensive training. So that might be on things like behavior management or modeling things for children, and also letting you do some of the things that you wouldn't be able to do normally, like interview children. So for example, one of the schools I was at, they kind of literally brought a class into a hall, and we were sitting around, and we were able to kind of just talk to each of them about how certain things felt, how certain teaching styles work, so they could we could hear from them kind of how they feel when they're on the receiving end of what we offer as teachers, and so those sessions are really powerful. In terms of the kind of, if you separate out all the educational side and just think about the teaching side, people tend to get in reasonably early in the morning, because you have to be there, and most people are there at sort of 8ish or so. Obviously, one of the key things about teachers, you can never be late. You can't be late to a lesson or anything like that because the children can't turn up with no teacher there. So you've just got to be there. And then you have those blocks of lessons through the day. A lot of schools have like these hour-long slots, either probably 5 hour-long slots. My school has 40-minute lessons and has 8 of those. So it depends on which school you're in, but you're running with those slots through the day. And while you're in training, quite a lot of those are not full. So you will have quite a lot of lessons in which you're observing and learning from just sitting at the back and then kind of wandering around when the children are working independently. And then there's also quite a bit of time that's protected time. That's basically time that you've got to reflect on what you've just seen and to write things, to prepare lessons, to prepare lesson plans, and so on. And obviously as you become a properly qualified teacher and so on, then gradually some of that goes away and you have a lesser time. So that's roughly how the week works.
Great. And when do you leave in the evenings? What's your normal kind of go
Um,
home time?
yeah, I think most people leave pretty quickly after they've taught their last lesson. But obviously you do have to prepare things sometimes. So if you've got things to prepare, and obviously you get quicker at it, right? The first time you prepare a
Yeah.
lesson, you kind of agonize over it for ages, and you try and create the world's most perfect lesson, and then you and then gradually you realize that, okay, we need to make this much more efficient and quick, because you're going to create more and more of these things, and there's a lot of resources out there, and also every one of my colleagues and everything I hear from my fellow students as well, their experience of all their colleagues is that they're overwhelmingly happy to help you. So if you're trying to prepare a lesson on a particular topic, um, I've not encountered any teacher that said, "Oh, no, I'm not going to help you," or "I'm not going to give you advice on that." They're always keen to help and tell you where they think the challenges will be, and that really kind of keeps the burden down a bit, so you don't feel you're by yourself or something.
One of the bits that you touched on before, talking about your time at the university is behaviour management.
Mm,
I just wonder what your experiences were with behaviour management. So we do
mm,
well, I have at times read some stories in the press that about how challenging that can be.
mm.
I must admit, we slightly less. There's probably a few TV programs about 6 months ago that kind of
Yeah.
started to tighten that. But yeah, I mean, it is something
Uh,
that is probably that tends to get asked quite a lot. So I just wondered what your experience with that was, Peter.
Yeah, so I've found behavior management. Well, it's something that's quite new as a teacher, because as a new teacher, because you don't have to, it's not really something that kind of comes up in the commercial environment in the same way it comes up in the classroom. Um, but it is something that can be taught, and there are really good techniques. Um, and basically you need to learn them, and they need to be bold enough to apply them. So that's been my experience so far. So there's when you go down the teacher training route, you get taught lots of things like how to assess the children. It's called formative assessment. So when you're in the classroom, you're standing at the front there, and you've spent 5 minutes talking about something, and you want to know, did the children understand what I'm doing? And there's lots of techniques that are out there for getting people to respond to you. So there's whiteboards they can show you. There's various other techniques. There's online systems and things that you can get them to write things in, and so on. And you learn those techniques. And the first time you kind of apply every new technique, you're kind of very nervous about it, and you think, "Oh God, this maybe this won't work, or maybe I'm going to look an idiot if I try this one." But you kind of just have to go with it. Take each of the techniques that are presented to you, and then apply them and see what works for you. And gradually, you kind of develop a sort of collection of things that you feel comfortable with. And the same thing is true with behavior management, where you get taught a bunch of techniques for how other people have been effective in managing classrooms, and then you have to kind of internalize those techniques. It's definitely try all of them out at least once, so you kind of get a feel for how they actually work, rather than how you think they might work, but actually try it, see what happens, and then get used to sort of making an assessment of the class in front of you, and work out which ones you're going to apply to that particular class. So it's definitely something you've got to learn, sort of how to teach and how to manage behavior, but you are being taught how to do that. That's fundamentally what the universities and what your schools are really keen to help you do. So that's their job. They're taking you
Yeah.
down that path, and they want you to be successful. So that's the really nice thing. You are there. You are sort of being assessed from time to time. People are observing your lessons and things like that. But they you know they don't really come at it in a sort of negative fashion. They're coming at it, in my experience at least, with a sort of, that worked. This bit of your lesson worked well. Have you thought about this bit of the lesson? What did you think? And usually it's the part of the lesson you think, oh yeah, that didn't really work for me, and I need to figure out how I can fix it. But there are those people are there to help you figure it out, and that's been just really helpful.
Brilliant. Thank you. Last couple of questions I'm going to fire your way, Peter, if I may. How did you find, or how do you find going back um, as a trainee
Mm,
later on in life? You mentioned a lot of your kind of cohort are recent grads,
mm,
um, and you're kind of in a, I suppose it's relatively unique, career changing, and
mm,
hopefully with a little help from what we're trying to do as a charity is kind of started to become slightly more normalized.
mm.
But you are a slightly older maybe person going into a classroom with a into a school with children, and then potentially your colleagues are going to be younger than you, but you're yeah, it's the risk real lots of intergenerational pieces in play. But I suppose what I'm trying to get at is yeah, how do you find going later on in stage in life going into being a trainee again?
Yeah, so I was obviously kind of thinking about that before I went down this route, and you kind of wonder if you're gonna turn up and there's going to be a whole lot of 21-year-olds or something, and it isn't really like that. So I think probably maybe a quarter or something of the people in my cohort in mass were actually like completely fresh, undergraduates that just literally left university. And when I turned up on my first day, we were sitting around introducing ourselves, and I said, I think I'm probably the oldest person here. And then like two other people immediately put their hands up and said, "Oh, Peter, you're definitely not the oldest person here." So there's a whole range of ages of people starting careers in teaching for a whole lot of reasons that you probably know better than me. But um, so I didn't feel out of place at all, in the course. Obviously, it's strange being back on a university campus as a student, and there are a few kind of inconveniences as being sort of one of a big crowd that are sort of that are sort of being put through this process. But it's not that challenging, and they make an effort to make it feel like adult education, not the undergraduate experience that undergraduates have. So you do feel like you're going through an adult education process. Um, and I think once you get to school, obviously the people you're working with, the teachers you're working with, there obviously will be some people that are way younger than you who are teachers and have got many more years of experience as teachers than you do. But there are also many people of my own age as well that are teaching, and so we have a kind of a nice balance in the staff room, and it feels very well supported and an enjoyable sort of partnership that we have going on, really. So yeah,
Great.
you obviously get used to the idea that you're learning something and that you're going to have to go through a course and things, but if you can get your head around that, I think it's not quite as bad as it might
Yeah,
appear.
brilliant. Thank you. Um, I'm interested, just a last couple of questions, but I keep saying that, don't I? Apologies. But I'm just interested, firstly, in what's been the biggest surprise. We've got a couple of questions that are coming that have been put there around corporate life versus teaching, and um, I just wondered what's the biggest surprise, and when you kind of decided to go on this journey and then sort of thinking about what it was going to be like, what it was going to be like to be a teacher, to be teaching maths, to be in a classroom, and now having experienced that and coming to the end of your first year,
Mm.
what's been the biggest surprise that you've found from what you perceived it to be like to what you found it to be like?
Um, well, a couple of things. So just on the teaching front itself, there's bound to be some surprises when you start teaching and you start learning how you teach a group of people. So if you've got any background experience in sort of tutoring or in sort of lecturing at a university level, it's different teaching children, and
Mhm.
so there's that sort of surprise. So, for example, I found when I first walked into the room, my theory was that, you teach the children until they've all got it, and all 30 of those children, or whatever it is, have got what it is you're trying to teach, and then they move to independent work. And quite quickly, I realized, with a little bit of help and advice, that's not what works in the classroom. You have to teach till you've got a significant majority of the children have understood, and then you move them to independent work, at which point you can wander around the room and you can help them. So you learn kind of some of these aspects of how teaching works, and that's a really powerful thing. I saw there was a question about stress. Um, I don't think I think I have felt less stressed in a teaching environment than a corporate environment. Obviously, in a teaching environment, it's not commercial in the same sense that the commercial world is, where you're kind of measured on your success in whatever you're doing, like selling or creating some product or whatever it happens to be. So that stress isn't there. Obviously, there are occasionally stresses. You've got a deadline to create an assignment for a PGCE, or you're in a rush to create a particular lesson. But I think that the stress is different, and the more you get used to it, the more you can kind of predict what's going on, and get used to how you're going to be ready for the classes that are coming up. And as soon as things start to get predictable, and basically how things work and what's going to come up and when you need to do it, then that subsides. So obviously the first few days are going to be quite exciting and quite different and quite a change and probably stressful, I guess. But that's what you'd expect from doing any kind of new thing. But it does kind of ease off, and there's such a lot of sort of positive sort of rewards, sort of personal positive rewards from teaching people, that kind of helps to offset stress that you might feel that you've got to get lesson ready, or whatever the thing that's worrying you is. So, yeah.
Thank you. And then my favorite question to close, but what piece of advice would you give our audience today that are considering going into training to be a teacher? What's your one piece of advice that you'd like people to
One
take
piece of
away from
advice,
tonight?
okay. So do some homework, basically. So definitely try and take any opportunity you get to either talk to people that have been down this route already as trainee teachers, or go into school if you can. Go and see a school, and see what happens in there, so you can kind of feel confident in your decision, so that you're not kind of second guessing yourself all the way through the summer and into the early autumn, and maybe even a, what have I let myself in for? Am I doing the right thing? So I think if you can do that, and take advantage of any opportunity you get to learn more about it, then I think you'll feel happier and more confident. So that would be my best advice, I think.
Thank you. I once one of our now teachers once described it as, it's the same as anything you do in the commercial world. You research it, you plan for it, you think about the scenarios, you mitigate the risks, and yeah, that kind of experience is really, really important. So thank you for that. Peter, thank you so much for your time this evening. I do appreciate it. I know you're in your second placement, and you're flying around to different schools and got other priorities competing on your time. So I do appreciate it, you joining us this evening. Apologies to those in the audience, we haven't got to some of your questions. We've got a couple of slides that I'd just like to show you before we conclude, and then we'll try and get to those questions offline. In summary, we would love to help you become a great secondary school teacher at Now Teach. We offer free expert advice to apply for a teacher training, 2 years personalised career change support, a lifetime of membership of a national network of career changes, and help you to make an impact on young people's lives using your previous experience. There's a link there in the chat to our website. On our website, you'll find an EOI form that we would love for you to complete, and then we can answer some more of your questions and support you on your journey. Joe's very kindly popped up feedback for the webinar this evening. Love to hear your thoughts. How can we improve? How can we make it better? What can we do for future webinars that you might be interested in? So if you'd be very kind just to take a few moments just to complete that, that would be wonderful. Perfect. And then, yes, please do go onto our website. Please do complete that expression of interest. And we would love to speak to you in future. Thank you so much for joining us. We've managed to keep it on time, so hopefully that gives you opportunity to enjoy the rest of your evenings. I hope you find it informative. We've really enjoyed, Peter, your company. Thank you so much for speaking so openly about your experiences. Thanks to Joe in the background with the tech, and Rachel and Wendy doing some wonderful work with the questions. Thank you for joining us, and I wish you a lovely evening. Goodbye.